welcome to the 5th Annual Guild of Music Supervisors State of Music in Media Conference.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Julia Betley. I work at RCA Records. I'm VP of Licensing and Soundtracks, and this is the Euphoria panel. I'm just going to do a quick intro of the panelists in case those of you in the room are unaware, and then we'll get right into it. So Jen Malone is an Emmy-nominated music supervisor who started her career in the music industry as a publicist at Formula PR, working for 9 Inch Nails, Portishead, Chemical Brothers, Crystal Method, Marilyn Manson, Prodigy, and many more. Her credits as a music supervisor include Euphoria, Creed 2, Atlanta, The Resident, the BET series Boomerang, the upcoming AMC series Dispatches from Elsewhere, Are You the One, Step Up, and many more. Sam Levinson is a writer, producer, and director known for his work on The Wizard of Lies, Assassination Nation, and Another Happy Day. In 2011, Sam won the Waldo Salt Screenwriting Award for his debut directorial work on Another Happy Day. Before he began producing and directing, Levinson appeared on... No? Okay. All right. We're here to talk about Euphoria, so we're just going to... Bryant is a music editor, so... Fine. All right, fine. I assume everyone in the room has seen the show, so I'll skip the bio of the show and I'll get right into it. So Sam, thanks for being here today to talk about it. I counted up the list Jen sent me, and there were just shy of 110 songs licensed in this 8-episode season. So a lot of music to unpack here. Was music always going to be a big part of the storytelling from the outset for this show?
Yeah, I think so, just in the sense that, hello, thank you for having me, by the way. Yeah, I think well, for a couple of reasons. One, when I write, even if a scene doesn't contain a song in it, I sometimes have to find a song that's in some ways kind of analogous to the actual scene in order to understand the rhythm of it. So it's a big part of the kind of the writing process, but also too, I think because we're dealing with young people, we're dealing with mainly the kind of inarticulation of feelings and emotions, that music is, in my life, is maybe the most kind of powerful mode of expression outside of yourself. And so I think it was always it was written that way, and it was designed that way. I just didn't quite know how we would pull it off.
Right. Well, Jen, you're a big part of that. So were there more songs in the series? This is for the two of you. Were there more songs in the series in the end than you thought there'd be? And Jen, how do you tackle such a big feat with that many songs? How did you prepare for this endeavor?
Well, I had no idea. One clearance at a time.
Yeah.
One spot, one list of replacements, one clearance at a time. I knew there would be a lot because it was dealing with teenagers and the music in the cars, music at their houses, music at parties. But I had no idea it was over 100. I knew it was a lot, but I didn't know it was that much. But yeah.
Sam, for those who in the room may be unfamiliar with your previous work, do you usually use music to shape your story like this? Or was this kind of a departure from what you've done previously?
I've used, I think on Assassination Nation, I think the blueprint of it was there just in the way in which we would at times use montage and music and then go into a scene. And so as I was, because I wrote the pilot, I think the week after we wrapped shooting on that. So I was sort of taking the things that I liked about the film and just in terms of its mechanics and logistics, and then taking the things that I thought we could push further and kind of expand upon. So yeah, its design was always to have kind of score and music throughout, but I think we found a really good balance on this one, you know, just in terms of the movement of it, just because it's a freewheeling kind of narrative in many ways, so you need something that kind of unifies it, and that could be a song or that could be score, but if it's too all over the place kind of music, if you don't have something that kind of locks it all in together, it can feel a bit haphazard. So I think, you know, lab score was a really key element to that, and that was just something I think, you know, that moment I think in the editorial, that's something that I don't even think we suspected that it would work, but we didn't know for certain until we were actually in the editing room and trying things out.
Can you talk a little bit about the process that you guys went through with him? I know you all worked with him in different capacities. You know, Labyrinth scored was the composer on the show. He's an artist. He had a lot of music throughout, licensed songs and score music. So, Brian, I know you worked a lot with him. Maybe can you touch on like how that process was for you?
Yeah. So in a way, it's different than working with your normal TV or film composer because, like you said, he's an artist. So most of the process is let me watch a scene, get a vibe from it, and sort of write a song, right? And Sam even encouraged him, like, don't worry about scoring, we'll figure that part out. You know, watch the scene, get a feeling, get a vibe, write it, send us stems, and we'll sort of play. And that was what was nice for me working as an editor, you know, the music editor on this, was Labyrinth was basically like, hey, here's the stuff, have fun, figure it out, you know? Not have fun, figure it out in the sense that it was wrong or anything like that, but do what you need to do to make it fit, because I wrote a 3-minute song for a 30-second spot, or whatever the case may be. And so a lot of what happened, especially on the later episodes, is Lab would send something, we would kind of line it up, we would send Sam the track, unedited, no picture, say, hey, have a listen. Sam would kick back any thoughts. Typically it was, yeah, this might work, maybe we can do this, we'll try this. And then we would sort of start to shape it to the scene and bring in Sam, watch it, tweak. What if we try this? What if we do that? What if we distort this element? What if we reverse this element? You know, all sorts of really creative things that normally you don't do on a television show. Normally it's, here's the cue, you place it in and it plays, you know, especially from our standpoint. And so in that regard, it was quite a bit different, you know, because I spent way too much time with Sam in a room going through cues, especially on the last few episodes.
And Sam, like, how did he get on the project? How did he, you know, come to be? What was your conversation with him from the beginning? That's it.
I was at a birthday party for a friend, and I was sitting next to him, and I knew his music, and I loved that he had this kind of restlessness, and there was this constant sort of like, you know, sort of evolution and progression to his music. And so I was telling him a little bit about the show, and I said, but I'm hearing, like, in my head as I'm writing, I'm hearing like kind of like those like Yeezus industrial drums, but mixed with like, you know, kind of like a gospel sort of, you know, undercurrent, and then like with fantastical moments like out of like a Danny Elfman film. And he's the only person who I've ever said that to who was like, yeah, I totally understand that. And then he just started humming some shit into his iPhone and like wandered off and was humming more shit and came back, and it was like, at that moment I was like, oh, this is the dude, like, we can do this together. And I think, and I just, you know, I feel like, you know, I never want to clip anyone's wings creatively, so I just, you know, I would just, you know, we would just kick them over episodes, and I would just say, write long, write alternates, write whatever you want, whatever you feel, and kick it back over to us. And then we would sit down in a room and we would just start to kind of go through it. I mean, you know, I mean, there's probably, out of all of the score and music that he had in the show, there's still probably about 100 other tracks that we just didn't use. And it's like, I loved how just excitable he was and how passionate and creative, because it's like, I think the toughest thing is when you get precious about things, and I'm not with writing or with anything, and so it's like to be able to just have that kind of back and forth thing where you're expanding upon one idea after another was a really kind of wonderful collaboration. And we rarely would even talk. He would I'd send him something and I'd say, oh, I'd text him, maybe we need a little piece like this or something. Oh, cool. Then he'd send over 10 different things, But it was a wonderful kind of experimental process that may have driven us a little mad, but was just because it was a lot of work. But it was, on all fronts. But yeah, it was kind of how it went down.
So, were there any scenes you wrote with a song in mind, particularly for the show?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I think the Universe Souls one was in there. The Bobby Womack Fly Me to the Moon was in there. I'm sure some other ones I can't totally. Yeah, there's the Anoni track I've written into the script, and I kind of write just because I feel like most people get bored when reading scripts, so I would always kind of write whatever I was listening to. Like Eric Burden was written into the script, things like that, where it's just as someone's reading, I just write no, seriously, listen to this song because it's fucking great. Three Dog Night was written into the script. Just things that like actually will catch your attention when you're reading it, so you don't just like. I don't know. I always have fears of people reading and just kind of drifting off. So I'm always trying to write some kind of selling a script with bold and all caps and everything. So there's kind of whatever I was listening to in the moment that felt right for it. And it's not necessarily that I have an attachment to that song or that song needs to be there because I know the kind of just the process of it. But yeah, just to give it a sense of like what's in my head at least, and it gives Jen a jumping off point, and also Julio Perez, our supervising editor, just to start to understand kind of whatever rhythm it is.
So further to that, I just want to go a little bit deeper because I feel like lines and scenes are rewritten all the time. So and Jen, you'll probably be able to jump in here, but it's very common to have music written into a script only to find out the music isn't clearable. Were there any songs you guys desperately wanted but that couldn't get? And if so, how did pivoting songs feel to you?
Well, what's amazing about Jen is I literally can't remember any song we didn't get because awesome. Whatever the replacement was fucking better.
That's awesome. Were there, Jen, you want to and you don't have to name specific songs. We don't want to, unless you want to. But were there any really challenging moments where finding a replacement was, or a Euphoria moment,
I think we there wasn't a lot actually. There was one. It was an Elton John song.
Oh, that's right.
But that wasn't denied because of content or anything like that. It was denied because the movie was coming out right at the same time, and so management was a little bit kind of precious about that. The Seals and Croft was denied, but then we got Air Supply, which was better.
That was one of my favorite.
That was really fun.
Can you talk about that scene? I know people have seen it, but I feel like it needs a moment because that scene's so fucking creepy.
So it's a brutal, violent beatdown. It was hard to watch to the point where, I don't know if Candace is here, my coordinator, who's a fucking rock star, but I was like, in email, dear Candace, if at any point you feel uncomfortable watching cuts of Euphoria, it's okay, we will, I just wanted to just not just cover myself to make sure that, she was comfortable watching, because at that scene, I was just like, oh God, it's so violent. So, but it was Julio's idea. We were talking at one of the mixes about how I love yacht rock. And so he put that in and I was like, it's brilliant because you're watching this really, it's hard to watch, but then you're hearing air supply. And so you're like, that's really funny. Why am I laughing at something that is so horrific to watch? And it just played really, really well. And, you know, I was very happy. You know, I hate coming to you guys and like, oh, the song's denied, but it was the song's denied, but here's some really good options, and Julia was psyched on them and then presented them to you, and you were down with it. So
Yeah, that one's hysterical, and completely makes that whole scene because he's showering in his apartment afterwards, and so it just sounds like it's on the radio or something,
Totally.
and he's putting on his clothes, and there's just something that's so bizarre about it. But I think that's the kind, because I think this whole process is a real sort of, it's a collaboration in the sense that, and I think what's the toughest thing is assembling a team whose sensibilities you really trust. And because I'd be on set shooting a lot, like, you know, the kind of, you know, the back and forth and the ideas that Jen and Julio would come up with, the work that Bryant would do is like, you know you're in good hands, and you know that the kind of perverse humor of the piece, you know,
Right.
will
saying about this,
rise to the top. Yeah, maintained. Yeah.
To me, it was like almost the song playing in his head, like his, I don't know, like it was like he was that light at that moment, right? Which is like really dark if you think about it. Did you guys plan on certain themes or sounds for characters? I mean, every episode kind of dives into a character, right? And I feel like almost every episode kind of has its own different sound. Was that planned, or was it like, I feel like this character kind of has like, listen to this or sounds like this? Like, was that planned at all?
I don't think so, in the sense of like, it's weird. I never worked in television, and there's just so much to shoot and so much to do. So it's like at a certain point, everyone kind of, I think, just stops thinking about things on an intellectual level, and you just sort of operate on instinct. And so even like even the All For Us piece is just naturally started to evolve, where it became this thematic piece of every time that Rue was kind of tempted by drugs, or we felt like she was on kind of unstable ground, Julio and I would just start playing with the choir of it, and just the kind of low choir in the background. And so it was almost unintentional how it became Rue's theme. And I think that's kind of that's the exciting part of doing something that's in long form like that, is what ends up developing, you know, from it.
Well, and real quick, like Kat doesn't have a theme, but if you listen to her music, it like that's a Spotify playlist right there. Lizzo, Missy, like everything. She's the one that like immediately I can hear what she sounds like.
Yeah.
Like without even thinking about it.
But at the same time, like I know kind of traditionally, you know, you would make a music supervisor would make a playlist for each character, and I don't know why I just didn't do that. Like we have a giant playlist that's like 10 hours long of just cool shit that we would just throw in there. And I think it was more like seeing picture and just seeing what they were wearing, or the makeup, which was one of my favorite aspects of the show. So kind of just seeing the colors of how Sam shot it, and then be able to pick the music. So we wouldn't also get kind of boxed into a sound for a certain character.
Yeah.
You know, I think
Because they also evolve too,
Right,
you know, in very, you know, very different ways.
Right.
and then we don't, you know, and then some of the episodes are not, you know, that are all party episodes that have like so much music. It just we just wouldn't be locked into, okay, so we're gonna have to have trap throughout this whole scene, or, you know, and then Kat comes in, so then we have to go this way, you know, it just really kept it open to just a gut instinct of like just seeing it. And that's, as a music supervisor, that's how I work. Like I like to see it, okay, scene takes place at a bar, just show me a picture of the bar and I got it, you know?
How do you keep the sound fresh when it's, you know, there's it's teens at a party throughout a lot of this show. You know, obviously very different things happening at different party moments. How do you keep a viewer engaged? I mean, you did a great job. How do you keep the audience engaged when it's plays party music in the script? You know, like what's your process? How do you go about making it still feel fresh as the episode evolves?
Well, I think a great example of that is episode 6, the Halloween, because there was so much music and it was a puzzle. And I remember sitting in the room, because we had at one point, we had Tricky, and it was this one part where we had Tricky there. I think Rock Lobster was in there at one point. Yeah. We had Gustaffelstein at one point, and it was literally a puzzle from how to go from this scene where we need music to do this into this other scene that we needed to go somewhere else, and then also just dipping in and out of diegetic to non-diegetic the whole time, which I think is really cool that we were able to do that and have that, you know, go from one is the loneliest number to JID to that, you know, Chicana girl group from the 60s to Anderson .Paak to Ramsey, you know, it was just all over. At one point we had a bunch of like post-punk in there. Yeah. But it was just like, you know, and then we get in the room, and one of my favorite things was we would just sit in there and just be like, oh my God, have you heard this song? Oh, remember this song? And it just becomes like hanging out and listening to music the whole time. And hopefully
fight over the audio jack. You know, it's like, no, this one, you know.
I got one.
Jen, lots of musical elements in the finale version of the track. Can you talk about how those 1 billion pieces came together with the marching band and the orchestration and the recording and all that?
Well, first I went to set and we had a meeting, and Sam said, I want a 200, 300 piece marching band.
Well, because you know that, you know, they're going to cut you down to like 100, so you got to start somewhere.
So I was like, okay.
It's called bargaining.
It's smart. So we had Lab's track, and what we did is we sweetened it. So we worked with music contractors who did first just a demo of a marching band and choir arrangement. And we sent it to Sam, and Sam gave notes and tweak this and add this verse in, take that verse out. And so then we went into the studio, and I mean, it was the first time I did a pre-record of this kind of, it was like like advanced music supervision, and started with percussion came in, and they just laid down the tracks, and we would just do take after take, and these guys were fucking pros, and it was amazing, and just each marching band instrument, and then, you know, and then brass came in, and then winds came in, and then we had the choir came in, which were amazing. And that was kind of my favorite part, because, you know, the music contractors kind of kept looking to me like, do you like this? And I was like, yes, but I wanted more personality, more for, you know, and so I was kind of able to give notes on it, but everybody just got super into it. And it was really, really special. And then, you know, they mixed it and they gave us the final elements, and we sent it to Sam. And he wanted to tweak a couple things.
Yeah.
A couple, air quotes.
But that's when our music editors came in, who are amazing, because obviously we were not going to be able to go back into the studio and re-record anything. So, you know, I relied very much on these guys that helped put it together. And then I worked with production to find the Riverside Marching Band and, you know, make sure we got them the track. Oh, I forgot that we had to have Zendaya record the vocals. So that was a part of it too, obviously.
Is there a couple of versions of the song?
Yes, there's one. And then in the one that aired in 108, the final musical number, she sings it, and that's one that's on YouTube or on Spotify. And so when she recorded it, you were with us, like it was just a really quiet room, and she just, you know, just got, everybody got really inspired and into it, which was really special. It wasn't just like fucking karaoke scene of Islands in the Stream. You know what I mean? Like,
how long did it take to shoot that scene?
1 day. Yeah.
It's really great.
Yeah.
So I went with rehearsal and was there on set with you guys, which was amazing because we had like the marching band rehearsing their movements, and then we had the dancers in the other area. It was like one of the biggest productions
Yeah.
outside of clearing.
And that was our last day of shooting too.
Yeah.
So we've been shooting, I think, for like 167 days, and we were like delirious.
Really
And
energetic. You were.
So when we finally wrapped and the sun was coming up, it was just like everyone was just like in tears, wandering around like aimlessly, trying to figure out. I mean, we just couldn't. It was like an extraordinary night watching that all.
And you guys have done a lot of night shoots. It was the first time I ever did a night shoot, and I was just like, I was not okay. By like 4 a.m. I was not okay. I don't know how you guys did it.
I'll take a little bit of a somewhat left turn, but like, so episode 4, right, the carnival episode, it's pretty much all score. There are some licensed songs in there for sure, but like, what a different sounding episode than the rest. Was that a Lau idea? Like, how did that come out? And Bryant, I know you worked a lot on this episode, so.
How did that come out, Sam? All I know is what I ended up with.
Yeah. Yeah, it was always supposed to be an episode that I think that was all score. It was actually the first episode we kind of shot when we came back to shooting the series. So, and we wanted to, and I think it felt like we wanted to do something that felt like a departure from our normal kind of musical kind of sensibilities a little bit, and move into something that was a little grander, a little larger. But it was a complicated process. I mean, we got the lab sent over, the stems, and I think it was about like 11 or 12 minutes worth of music, but it's a 40-minute sequence.
Yeah, it's like 28 or 30 by the time it's all said and done, I think. It's a little bit shorter.
Oh, all right, there you go.
I remember very well.
And then, but so what we and the score that you sent over was just brilliant. I mean, really beautiful work. But sometimes it's like you want to kind of just strip away these elements, do that. So I mean, that we like sat in a room for.
That was probably 20 hours of work on that whole sequence alone, because that was like.
That was over like a period of days, I feel.
Yeah, because like I worked with Julio because you were in New York.
Yeah.
So I worked out like the first 6 minutes with Julio for the premiere or something. And then you came back, we watched that, we noted that, we treated that. And yeah, it was probably 3 nights of like 5, 6, 7 hours a night going through piece by piece. And because it was only a 10 or 11, I think it was actually 13 minutes of music, we had to find ways to extend, but also have it make sense and still fit the scene and not feel like a loop. And so if you look at, if anybody's familiar with a DAW like Pro Tools or anything, you look at it and it just looks like a bajillion and a half cuts, but hopefully you don't hear a single one of them. I think there's like 2 in the sequence that I still feel, but they were necessary evils. But yeah, and it wasn't just cut the music. We're in the funhouse with Cassie, and it was, okay, let's cut it, but then let's also treat it and make it trippy and weird and do this. And you watched it on one pass, I think, on the finals section, and it was like, oh, okay, so it's all great, but can we pull this chunk up 15 seconds and then shift this over here? Which, when you're dealing with this long, continuous piece of music, it sounds really simple of just like pick up this chunk and move it over here, but then that messes up this chunk and this chunk and this chunk and this chunk and this chunk. So yeah, that was a process. And the first time Sam and I worked together in the same room.
Yeah.
And we somehow got through it and finished the episode.
But it's fun because it's also about experimentation, and I think that's the key to it. Is like these things. A lot of the time I don't necessarily know what I'm searching for, and I don't know what it is. So sometimes I'd be like, "Yo, Brian, can we just take this whole track and play the shit backwards?" And like,
he's not kidding, by the way.
And then we'll take like all the stems and play all the stems backwards and forwards, and I think it's just like and through that process you start to discover little things. Even though 99% of it doesn't work, you go, oh, but this one idea is interesting, and what if we did this and did that? And so it's like, and just being able to kind of volley these ideas back and forth is what makes it exciting, and so that's why we could sit there and cut all these stems without wanting to shoot ourselves.
Yeah, I think there was only one night, like maybe halfway through, where it was like, we need to stop. And we may have been working on the ending of that episode,
Yeah.
not the carnival.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was a score piece in contention for where Laura's theme
Yeah,
ended up.
the rotating beds. Yeah.
And we had tried so much, and you were exhausted, I was exhausted, and it was like, maybe we shelve this, and
Yeah.
sneakily email Jen and be like, hey, is it possible to clear the tent?
Yeah.
Which she did in like less than 24
I know,
hours
that was amazing.
while we were mixing the episode.
That sounds like a story, Jen.
I got it all. Sometimes when you see certain phone numbers, you're like, oh, what? So it was the daily 11 o'clock crisis. And we love the temp, we need to have it. It's Laura's theme from
Don't
this,
look now.
yeah, from the 1974 Italian film. And so all the other shit that Candace and I were working on, we just had to switch gears and all hands on deck. We have to find who owns this. And it turned out to be a publishing company in Italy. And I think the master was here. I don't remember. But the publishing,
I don't expect you to remember everything.
we sent the quote, but with Europe, sometimes you don't know. It was in the summer, you don't know if they're on vacation or not. So I set my alarm for 3 a.m. to be able to call at 11. I feel like they'll be in the office at 11. I call them, and yes, just to make sure that they got the request, and yes, they got it. No, there won't be any problems. Yes, we'll get you the piece of paper that signs, and it's like until you get the quote request signed, it's not cleared until it's cleared. So then we got it and we cleared it, and so I let you guys know.
And meanwhile, we were legitimately the day of playback for the show.
This happened on Monday, but then so we got it cleared on Tuesday. And then Julio said, actually, we want John's theme too.
Yeah.
And then I think I broke something.
At least you knew who to go to though, right?
Yes,
Call
it
your
was
friend
fine. And
after
so it was just like, can you please clear this? But like, I just, and I said, have a backup, which is and there is no backup.
No backup.
No backup. So it was just, just praying, and it cleared, and it was fine, and it worked, and it's one of those moments of, I think, of when you see something that you worked so freaking hard, and it's like, oh man, this is perfect. Like, it was like the whole show, like, it was worth it.
Well, you just talked about a crazy clearance, right? Calling Italy at 3 a.m. LA time. Were there any other crazy wonky? I mean, for those in the room that don't know, you and I worked on a lot of things together for this show, for sure. Thanks for listening to all the music I sent you. I really appreciate it. Clearances come down to the last minute. Music is crazy. There are writers that come out of the woodworks. I've read about your take-A clearance for another show where you contacted someone in jail to clear music. Any others from this show that were noteworthy, that were kind of a challenge or a mountain?
I mean, the Beyonce was a lot, but what was good about it was that we knew where all the bodies were buried, so to speak. And I'm so lucky that everybody that I work with on the other side, all the labels and publishers, you guys kind of work as hard as I do to get the songs cleared. And I'm super, super lucky with that. I mean, there was always something. I mean, that Dodger record, that I got, and it was, I was going to clear it, and they were like, oh, and by the way, there's an interpolation of this song in there. And I was just like, okay, like there's 10 lawyers on this chain. And so I said, okay, well, is that cleared, and what's their percentage? And it was like, oh, well, this person, so-and-so is happy to give up their 5%. And I'm like,
Right.
it was, and this was towards the end, and I was just like, I was burned, but
it made it.
yeah. Oh, they fixed it. They weren't gonna, they fixed it. But no, I mean, there was just a lot. It was a lot of people that owned a lot of music, or a lot of, it was a lot. But I think that was one. I mean, the Italian piece was, it was also just very stressful because the timeline for TV was so short. But there was so much I probably don't even remember right now.
Yeah, I mean, you and I, we went back and forth a lot. We worked on a lot of craziness, a lot of last minute, a lot of emails, a lot of, one of our artists redid a song, but then you guys wanted to go
Well,
with
we wanted-
the original
yeah,
demo version, so we had to license the demo version. I get the artist on board with
I remember
licensing the demo
I
what?
had to send Jen that email and be like, yeah, so the new one, yeah, can we get the
And that was an 11 a.m.
That was
Euphoria crisis.
day before playback?
Yeah.
Sam watched the show.
Yeah, but it was, again, like people like Julia and, Warner and Universal, like all of the, and even the indies. It's just, again, we can't do our job without you guys. And, you guys, I think, also saw kind of that the show was special and we just have such great relationships that you straight up worked as hard as we did.
Yeah, I have to
together.
say, a lot of artists, since the show has aired, a lot of artists that I've met with on our roster have just said, how can I get Euphoria? So I think
That's cool.
yeah.
I mean, we had, there was,
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, for the finale too, there was the scene where Cassie is getting an abortion. And so it was, and Sam, you wanted Arcade Fire, and they can be very, very precious and very picky. And I was like, okay, if you just send a quote request with a piece of paper that says, song plays while Cassie is getting an abortion. That's like,
And robbery occurs.
yeah, and it's like, okay, so you have to kind of understand the nuances. And so I happened to know one of the managers, and I was like, hey, look, this is what's happening. You're gonna get a request. I know Arcade Fire are very, I know they're precious and all of that, but, and I just kind of gave them the spiel. So, and we just, kind of had to wait, and they had to come see I forget if a lot of people had to see clips or script pages, but we ended up getting it, and it was, with their blessings. I mean, I know Wynn reached out to you, and that was, I think perhaps sometimes I admittedly maybe underestimated some of the artists that were precious about being in the show. Like Solange is you're lucky if you get a call back from her. She cleared within 24 hours, like her portion, which was unheard of.
But that song is so beautiful and so perfect in that scene.
And that's why we got it.
I think that's really good. It really speaks to the powerfulness of the show. I want to read a quote that I pulled from a Hollywood Reporter interview that you did, because I feel like it touches on the subject. And you said, I think the nature of growing up is the understanding that people are far more complicated than we initially assume. And everybody is trying to overcome the little traumas or big traumas in their lives. And that journey of whether or not we overcome them is ultimately what shapes us as human beings. I think that's a really important topic for right now, really important, almost more than it ever has been. I wanted to ask you, where do you feel like music fits into our traumas? Can it help manifest them? Can it help assuage them? I mean, this is where we are right now.
I mean, it depends on your relationship to music, but I think, look, I mean, I struggled with drug addiction, for many years and ultimately, got clean and stuff. But when I think back to certain moments in my life, and especially when I was younger and a teenager, and I remember certain songs, and there's something about music that has the ability to kind of remove yourself from a situation and kind of look at it objectively, like almost as if it's a film, almost as if it's not real. And I think it's a powerful coping mechanism in some senses, and it's also a powerful tool to understand, I think, the relationship between whatever trauma it is that you're experiencing and and the kind of the world around you, and to kind of give it a certain perspective, because you're no longer looking at it just through your eyes. And that's what music's always sort of done, that's kind of, I don't know, that's what it's always sort of done for me in that way. Like I remember, just, being a certain age and really going through some dark shit and just putting in my headphones, and suddenly I could deal with it and I could move through it, and I could just continue for a little bit longer. And I think that that's part of what I think we're trying to get at with the show, which is ultimately a show, I think, about human behavior and about how we interact with one another, and about what we know and don't know about each other. It's not really like it's not a school about, it's not really a show about like high school kids in that sense, where, I don't care. I dropped, the last grade that I actually made it through was the 8th grade. So I've literally I haven't really been to high school. I got kicked out of a couple of schools in 9th grade. And so my interest isn't in the kind of those normal things, those kind of, studying and all of that kind of stuff. It's more in the interpersonal relationships. And so I don't know, it just felt like if we can use a song like My Body is a Cage to kind of, to go into Cassie's reality in the moment, and also her fantasy of what she wishes, she could be, or where she could be, that feels like being young or being a human being in some ways.
Totally. As a person that works in music licensing, as a person that tries to get their music into things all the time, it's really special to watch a show like this when something like that comes together, and to know, even just for me, someone that talks to music supervisors all day long, just kind of a fraction of what goes into that, right? So it's amazing that we can talk about all the work that you guys did behind that, and Labyrinth too. It's crazy. I was wondering how many times a day I got flipped up in the air, and because I'm one of those people that gets sick really easily from spinning.
It's unreal. I've said this before, but it is true. And it was actually the moment where we were in the recording studio, and I was just, and it was really nice because I had nothing to do but just sit there and watch, so it's no one's looking at me for anything. So I'm just chilling in the back and, eating chips and stuff. And she's she was recording the song, and it's just, her talent has no ceiling. And I guess what's exciting just about, a show like this is not only is she able to carry this character with just such a level of gravitas and heart, but she can fucking sing, and she can dance, she can do anything. And so what becomes exciting is going, all right, what can we do next? How can we continue to sort of push this forward into another realm and another thing? But it's a really exciting kind of collaborative sort of partnership. And so it's because this show kind of can go anywhere, but there's a certain security that you have, as a writer and director, going yeah, but she'll be at the helm, so I don't know. It was a really extraordinary. She's whatever. Point is, she's a genius.
I'm dying to know, but I won't ask you any questions on where it is going for the next season. I'll stay tuned. I'll just say this. There's a lot of content out there right now. There's a lot of shows for people to watch. There's everyone's always have you seen this? Have you seen that? And there aren't many. There's few and far between something that comes along like a musical use like that to tell a story. So I go back to it as a music lover, as a TV lover, as a person that works in this space to go back and strive for those moments. So you guys did a real an amazing, fantastic job. It's a really powerful use, and I think especially in 2019 when we're talking about women's right to choose and that kind of stuff. That's a pretty common topic to have a big moment in such a big show that's talked about all the time on, especially with a younger audience. Kudos to the whole team on stage. I think we're gonna take just like 10 minutes of Q&A, so a couple. Okay, we'll start with you.
Brandon Hart. So I'm an aspiring music supervisor. You were actually the person who told me to come out here. And so I was trying to see from like someone that's just getting started, what are some of the things, you know, that you would suggest? Right now I work in like 95, Charlotte, North Carolina, so my education isn't like, you know, the greatest. So like for someone like me trying to get experience starting out, what are some of the things you got to suggest?
At least in my line of work, like I get jobs, or everybody I think in a way gets jobs through who they know, right? So, you know, like this collaboration didn't exist a year ago between Sam and I'm already like, okay, when is season 2 so I can make sure my schedule is open? You know what I mean? Because like, we're gonna do it. I think he would probably lose his mind if somebody else sat down in my chair.
Oh, no, you're not going anywhere. I need you.
See? So meet filmmakers too. I mean, North Carolina, there's a ton of shooting. I mean, there's a lot of on hiatus right now because of the hurricane. I know a couple shows that are down right now, but meet filmmakers and tell them what you're interested in and get interested in their projects, all that as well.
Learn how to do your own clearance.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Intern, I mean, that's how I did. I started out as an intern. This is my second career, and yeah, I just had to start from the bottom and work my way up.
And I think I can actually weigh in on this one, even as someone that works with a lot of aspiring music supervisors and people that email and say, how can I use this song? I made a like how-to document for basic requesting of music. And I think knowing the information you need to ask the person that wants to use the song, like the person that you're gonna work for that wants to put the song in their movie and you're responsible for clearing it, you need to know the basics and the ins and outs of what questions to ask, what rights you need to get. That is, you can jump in if I'm wrong here, but a big crux of music supervision, it is not just about making a playlist and giving Sam ideas and, you know, and saying, I got this song off a blog. That's not what it's about.
No. The first piece of, so my first internship was with Dave Jordan. And the first piece of advice was there, my first day, had my pad, he said, number 1, learn how to do your own clearance. I actually still have that book, but that's the most important thing because it could be the most perfect song in the world. But if you don't know how to clear it and you can't clear it, you can't use it. So music supervision is so much more than just picking out cool shit.
Yes.
Hi, Sam Levinson. I have a question for Jen, just kind of logistically speaking. If you licensed 100 songs, is it safe to say that you sent out 200 quote requests?
Good question.
And how many backups do you have for each song?
Where's Candace? Are you here?
I'm way over here.
I mean, what, like 400 pieces of paper throughout the whole thing between quotes, confirms?
At least.
At least. So, yeah, it was.
Right, because it's not just about the original clearance, right? So like you and I work on something.
For Beyonce, for example, 17 writers. Yeah, but everything, you know, everybody, all the splits were known, which was like more than half the battle. And a lot of them were majors, but mostly all the majors were like, oh, I have 1.256. If Beyonce approves, we approve. So that was great. So then we just had to get Beyonce on board, and that was through Sony and getting them the episode. And so once she approved, everything fell into place. But it's 17 writers, 8, 9, no, like maybe like 10 different publishers. So that's 10 requests right there. And then the master, and then so that's another 10 confirms. It's just, it's a lot, but you just have to stay organized.
And that's if the use stays the same, right? So like you and I will work on a clearance and then Jen will come back and say, so I know I cleared this for up to 2.5 minutes and you quoted X dollars, but the use is actually 1.5 minutes. Can I get like half of those dollars taken off? like,
Yeah.
you know, so that's if all your clearances that you send out stay the same. I mean, as you know, we've discussed, like, things change, things get, you know, recut all the time, so that's another set of paperwork, and then talking about comp firms after that, so there's a lot. It's a lot. Sorry, yes, you.
Hello, my name's Daryl Kennedy. I just want to say thank you, each of you guys, for being here. It's truly an honor to be able to listen to the process and for this show to even exist. Like, it really paved the way for a community that's a lot more representative of myself and other people in this room and in this country. This question specifically for Sam. You know, as a director and creator, really getting the opportunity to tell like your story, which is really rare in this industry. How were you able to connect your story and your experiences through such a beautifully diverse cast and storytelling? I mean, you really gave opportunity to stories that are not only seldomly covered, but in today's climate, it's hard to like successfully appease a lot of the audiences that you were able to triumph in. So how were you able to do that?
Yeah, well, I think part of it is like taking experiences that are real and honest and true to what you went through as a human being, and then being able to give it away and being able to tell it through other actors, through their experiences. And it gives you a certain distance from it. You know, it's like if I was dealing with, you know, a pure sort of reflection of myself at, you know, a certain age, it's not far enough away from me. It hasn't evolved into something larger and bigger. And I think that's part of what I want to do, is to find a way to make it universal and to make it bigger than just myself. It's not just about my struggles with addiction or various things. I mean, and I think, and also at the same time, I think I'm you know, looking to the cast and seeing, you know, how they interpret it, and also just the conversations we have. You know, I'd always find myself, especially in later episodes, because the first 4 were pretty much written, and just we'd have conversations, and suddenly they'd end up in scripts, and I think it's just about being open and listening to everyone around you and incorporating that into it. Look, I also think that it took everyone a bit by surprise. I think, the show connected with so many people, because there's always this thing kind of initially when it was coming out, well, it's a show for teenagers, and you go, no, it's not really, you know. And I think it's about, and what's interesting is that there's people in their 60s and their 70s who really genuinely connect to these characters and the things that they're going through. I don't think it's not just for young people. It's not just for a certain subsection of people or a certain demographic. I think all of those feelings when we're young are so strong and like so palpable and visceral, and they live inside of us, and they really shape who we are in many ways. And so, if you can recall what those, if they still exist within you to that extent, they certainly do with myself, then you're able to kind of connect. You're able to sort of connect to it. So I think it was, I guess, the long and the short of it is just, I wanted to move it away from myself and to give away some of the things, like in episode 4, like a good portion of episode 4 is like things that actually happen in my life. But if I could give it to the character of Jules, and I can build a hospital, not unlike almost exactly like a hospital I was once in. It was a way of actually taking all of that kind of pain and shit and everything and turning it into something kind of beautiful. And I think that's ultimately what it's about, at least for me.
This is a great question. Thanks so much. Sure, you're.
My question is, how was Drake involved as an executive producer for the show?
I think he was he was a really big champion of this piece sort of early on. He had gotten a hold of the scripts somehow and had basically just called up HBO and was like, I love this show. How can I be a part of this show? And then we all sort of sat down and talked and he became just sort of like someone who I think just helped in terms of marketing, in terms of just really pushing certain things forward, and especially at that time too when I think this is pretty early on. It meant a lot to, and it really there's a version of this show that could have been shot on HD cams, not a version I'd like to see, but there's a version of, and I think so, I think his support was really meaningful.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Dom. Thanks for being here. I wanted to ask how you balance when you're selecting songs for certain scenes, songs that are more well-known and that will strike a chord with the audience once they see them, and that fit in the scene versus a song that you may receive from a lesser-known artist, but that also fits very well in the scene, but that the audience won't know offhand necessarily. How do you strike that balance?
I think it's just about the song.
Yeah.
And what it does for the scene, and I don't think that we necessarily choose songs based on the artist. It's more about the song and what it does and how it connects the audience to the picture. But it's just
But at the same time, I think we're cognizant of we don't want to play a bunch of shit that everyone's heard a million times, and there's an element of there's an element of just not this song works, fuck. Sometimes you get depressed when a song works because you're like, no, we can't do this.
But we wouldn't go to a lot of those songs.
No, but I'm just saying because look, a large part of the process is I even when we're editing, Julio will cut together his selects, and sometimes I'll just come in and a lot of editors don't like to play any music until they cut a scene. I'm a big believer in play music to these selects. So literally, I don't even care about the dialogue. I just want to hear music. And so we just sit around, we just play fucking music all day long and shoot the shit and just start to see what starts to work. And the Jules opening in episode 4 is a perfect example of it because we had that sequence, we had shot it, and there was nothing that it tonally felt weird, and it was it was humorous at times, and then it was really dark, and it actually scared the shit out of all of us in the editing room because we're going how does this work tonally? How does it feel like a cohesive piece? And it was only through, we literally tried everything, I think, from De La Rue's theme to Camille to Megadeth to fucking and finally it was this one lab stem that it's what about this? And it felt like it wouldn't work because it was almost too happy or uplifting of a piece, and there was a certain sort of skepticism. And as soon as we played it to picture, the whole thing came together, and it was the emotion was just pulled out of it. And I think so. It's about it's just about experimenting, and whatever works, and that's kind of what's exciting about it is, So I think, we don't want to play a bunch of shit that everyone's heard,
It's more of a comment and a small question. So for one, I also wanted to commend you guys on all the intro music, all the intro into the credits. For example, the Lil Wayne one, and that was stuck out to me a lot. That was such a good start. And then I actually really also admired a song for you, the Donny Hathaway scene. I loved that scene. the feeling and everything, and I kind of wanted to pick you guys' brains on how you felt about choosing that and why that fit so well.
Well, it's funny, I think, for a long time, we had Adagio for strings in there, and which is a piece we've actually heard like 1,000,000 times, and it works really beautifully. And at a certain point, I think we like got into like a debate about like Shuggy Otis or something like Julio and I were like arguing about Shuggy Otis and
Penderecki and Ligeti and a whole bunch of other people.
Yeah, we tried a bunch of stuff, but it was this whole Shuggy Otis argument. We're talking about Jackie Brown and I don't know, it's the whole thing that happened in the editing room. And then we just started playing different tracks that we love from like Sam Cooke's I Wish You Love and all this kind of stuff. And Z, I had invited Z to come by the editing room, and she was supposed to show up in like, 45 minutes or something. And then at a certain point, we're going through it, and I was like, well, what about Donny Hathaway? What about a song for you? And we played it we actually played it just listening to it because we weren't even playing it to picture. And I think we were just talking about music, and we both kind of looked at each other, and I know that we had the same thought. He's like, let's play that song again. And then so we listened to it again. We're just like staring at each other, and like in a windowless room. And he's like, you think? And I'm like, yeah, let's try that. And like, so we put it to picture, and we sat there, we watched it. I looked over at Julio. Julio was all emotional. He's like, man, I can't, dude. I can't take this, man. I fucking, And he just like walks out of the room. Z shows up, and I was like, well, what version should we play for her? Because we had worked on it. We hadn't even like cut it to picture or anything. And the song fit perfectly. It ended right on the cut. And we were also a little delusional because we'd been working so long. So we were like, yo, this is some real mystical shit here. Then Z comes in. Z watches the episode, and that first push in, and she hears the piano, and she went, oh, are you fucking kidding me? and then she, and I could just see, and she was like, this is my favorite song of all time. And it was this weird thing, and it was like, and also too about, just, knowing a little bit about Donny Hathaway's life. And it just felt like, you know what? It's funny, it's like after Z left, and Z thought I had actually put it in there because it was her favorite song. And I was like, I had no idea it was your favorite song. And then she left, and then Julio was like, whoa, dude, this shit's really mystical. And so then we ended up just keeping it. Most of the time we cut a lot of music to picture. That one, we never changed. It just went in there, and that was it. And there was, and to quote Julio during a very funny mix session, at the very end, he's like, it's sacrilegious to put any music edits in this song. And we just kept it there because the length was perfect and it worked. So that's kind of how it happened. It was one of those strange, beautiful moments.
I'm getting the wrap up signal, but I just wanted to say thanks to all three of you for giving your time to this panel and to this conference. And thanks for making the show so music forward as a person whose job depends on it, but also as a person who just loves music uses and visual media. You guys created something that, honestly, we're doing a panel on it for a reason. It is just not only an insurmountable feat in terms of selection of music, creation of music for Labyrinth, and clearing of music. But I think that last story that you told just speaks to how powerful the show you created was, and what a great team you have in place for bringing music in to make your story the best that it can be. And I think I'm really fucking excited for season 2. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.